How come you don't want me, man? I'm sorry. It was great seeing you, son.
easier?
No. Yes. It gets easier.
Oh, yeah? Look at you.
Good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning. How's everybody doing? Good. So, welcome to our 6th annual TEDx. You guys look fabulous. You can just roll from here right out for dinner or a night on the town. That's how good most of you look. Quincy. So, this morning we have a pretty good lineup for you. We have 8 speakers in 3 sessions. So you're going to get a chance to have a break. The longest is probably around 16, 17 minutes. The shortest is around 8. You've got 3 of your fellow students, Dee Dee, Amelia, and Maher, which is awesome. And they spent a lot of time working on this, and they're nervous, but as I said, you're never going to be in front of a more supportive audience than you guys. So they really appreciate, all the speakers really appreciate that you're here, you're open-minded, and you're going to be very supportive. And I've told them how great you guys are. We have a member of our staff, Gord Bilston, is going to talk about the Blue Planet, but from a perspective you've never heard before. We've got Carla Furster, who you may or may not know it, but she is the supplier for all the coffee down in McNeil's, and she has a very interesting story about her pursuit of business and her passions. We have Ken Wiley, who is, among other things, backcountry ski guide, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about social courage. So he had an experience that is, obviously very life-altering for him. He's going to share that with you. Erica Harris is going to talk to you guys a little bit about her journey. And then we finish off with Milo Chandel. He's a grad from the school, 87. He's going to talk about why wait, creative process, being willing to jump in, and he's going to be our final speaker for the day. So it's a great lineup, but like anything with this, it really is a back and forth. So I really encourage you to be open-minded during the breaks. Not going back to the house. You're going to go out here, you're going to have a snack, you're going to have a coffee, something that food services put out there, and have a conversation about what you've heard. You're not going to agree with everything, and that's fine. That's part of the dialogue. So open-minded and then open-eyed. That's the other thing. I understand that, hey, you're teenagers, you're tired all the time, but make sure that, again, you're attentive. If you were up here on the stage and you looked out, what do you want to see? Somebody looking back, right? So friends don't let friends nod off. So please make sure you're open-minded and open-minded. Oh, sorry, and open-eyed. I also have had no sleep. I'd ask that if we can, if anybody comes in, we can fill these front seats here. That would be great. Again, because if you're up here, you want to make sure that you're getting immediate feedback. Hey, so that's it. Have a great morning. You're out of class, and this is your time to be able to think beyond sort of what your normal scope of work on a Saturday is. Without any further ado, I'm going to introduce our MCs for today, Ashley and Quinn, if you want to give them a hand. Up here. Mr. Armitage is desperately saying, get upstage. They're going to be introducing and running the event from here on in, so thanks for being here, thanks for being open-minded, and we'll see you at the end. And now we have a short intro video for TEDx. All right.
From Kenya to Colombia, from Iraq to Korea, in slums, in schools, in prisons, and in theaters, every day people gather at TEDx events around the world to hear the best ideas bubbling up in their communities. Today, you are part of a global conversation about our shared future. So what is this TEDx? TEDx is an initiative of the TED Conference, a non-profit devoted to ideas worth spreading. We grant free licenses to allow TED-like events to spread globally. This event today is based on the TED Conference format and ideals, but is independently organized by your local community. So please make sure to thank the team of volunteers who worked so hard on today's event. It's their ideas, dedication, and time that made it all possible. It's they who booked all the speakers, and the views you'll hear today are, of course, those of those speakers, not necessarily of TED's. But we hope their talks spark an exciting conversation among you. This is a day for curiosity and for skepticism, for openness and for critical thinking, for inspiration and for action. The more you enter into it, the more you'll take out. And now, on with the show.
Hello, Brentwood. So our first speaker of the day is Amelia Hadfield. She is known as a national champion debater. She is attending her senior year at Brentwood and is known as our assistant head prefect of academics. Her talk is titled Convenient Environmentalism, where she will be talking about marketing schemes and their implications on the environmentalist movement. Let's give a warm welcome to Amelia.
It's a giant conspiracy. I've come to realize that the more something tells me it's trustworthy, the less trustworthy it actually is. Sales tactics and marketing schemes make me skeptical, and they should make you skeptical too. And now before you brand me as just another young cynic jaded by a typical millennial anti-capitalist vendetta, hear me out. I have nothing against the innate desire for consumption. In fact, I'm giving Madonna a run for her money as a material girl. But nevertheless, I understand that being such an avid consumer comes with an obligation to be considerate of that which you buy. Now, this does not mean using paper straws. This does not mean buying organic food at the grocer's, nor does it mean necessarily cooking with coconut oil, despite the underlying narratives that these are the steps that we, as consumers, must take in order to make the world a better place. These narratives are what I like to call convenient environmentalism, and they're pervasive in every facet of our lives. Little and big tips and tricks we're being fed in order to make us feel like we're doing our part. But the problem is that we're all approaching it the wrong way. As far as I can tell, we're cutting one blade of grass and pretending that the lawn is mown. I think the entire rhetoric surrounding climate change action on an individual basis is loaded. The question we all ask ourselves is, what can I do? How can I fulfill my obligation to the planet? And as a byproduct of that line of thinking, we begin asking what trends, what investments, or what products we can buy into in order to fulfill that goal. But we, collectively, need to reframe the discussion in our minds and rather ask, what is this company or this trend really doing for the environment? The difference in semantics is subtle, but the impact is profound. Instead of thinking of the impact of your actions in the context of, let's say, the coffee shop, think farther. Understand what products were actually used to ship the organic food in your sandwich to you, or how much water it took to make your cup of coffee. Everything, from the bean plantation to the disposable cup. In other words, don't just consider that which you are told to consider, because oftentimes that lacks the bigger picture. In some cases, the environmental impact of producing a disposable cup might actually be more detrimental than a plastic cup. In that sense, the intention is right, but the practice ends up being futile. But I think oftentimes it can be difficult for the average consumer to be able to differentiate between these legitimate movements and these empty trends. So today, I hope to be here to help you spot the difference. But let me make something clear. This isn't another speech dictating to you how you ought to save the world. In fact, I think it's the contrary. I want you to be motivated to think for yourself and do your own research, because it's innovation and independence that changes the world, not complacency. That said, I think one of the most pervasive messages we seem to hear is about plastic straws. In case you've forgotten, this is what a plastic straw looks like. Now, I must admit that when I was trying to think of what the best example would be to convey this process to you, I was worried that plastic straws would be too cliche. I could already hear the sound of 500 eyes rolling throughout this theater, but I think the fact that this example is so omnipresent actually corroborates with this idea that these environmentalist trends are fixated upon to an unhelpful degree. And perhaps it's time we start asking ourselves, why straws? Why is it that we're so fixated on plastic straws, yet we're fine with the plastic lid in which it sits? Why is it we're not concerned with cigarette butts, which are actually significantly more harmful to the environment? I think part of the answer to that is straws' relative redundancy. We don't think we need straws the way we think we need lids. And in that sense, a company can easily sell you an iced coffee with a paper straw and advertise the impact of that paper straw in a simultaneously heartwarming and guilt-inducing ad campaign that makes you feel inclined to buy coffee at their establishment because it feels good to do your part for the planet. Which would be fine, except oftentimes there isn't even a proper compost to dispose of your paper straw in, so it ends up in the landfill anyway, along with the cup and the lid and probably half the coffee because you let yourself off the hook after your one good climate deed of the day. Now, if you're like me when I came to this realization, you're probably feeling a little bit frustrated and, frankly, cheated right now. Which is not to say that our move away from plastic straws is a bad thing. It's obviously fantastic, but I don't think the motivation is right. In fact, I think the motivation is more of a marketing scheme to make you want to buy coffee at places that are environmentally friendly rather than actually being environmentally friendly. I mean, I sure felt cheated when I came to this realization. I'd lost the moral high ground I had over my parents every time I triumphantly flaunted my paper straw in environmentalist glory. But in all seriousness, I'd always been the one to believe that these value signaling techniques were legitimate. Needless to say, I never followed through to make sure that my paper straw ended up in the compost. And as a result, I was left between garbage islands and melting ice caps, wondering where I went wrong. But I don't think it's necessarily my fault. And I don't think it's your fault either. And I also don't think that that's a rhetoric that we hear often enough. Genuinely, it's the fault of the big companies who aren't following through to make sure that their marketing schemes actually turn into environmentalist movements. But of course, that comes with an obligation for you as consumers and me as a consumer to be aware of that and conscious of what I'm buying. For example, another one of the most pervasive messages we hear is how important it is to eat organic or meatless. So let's analyze what that really means. Take a second to think about what it actually means for something to be organic. If you're like me when I started this talk, you're probably currently sifting through some vague ideas of health benefits, environmental goodness, and maybe even something about GMOs or pesticides comes to mind. Okay, now here's another question. What does an official organic certification look like? Now this is where most people begin to falter. Food which has been legitimately organically certified, and I will explain what that looks like in a moment, has essentially passed a series of qualifications which determines that little to no pesticides or genetic modification tactics were used, among other things. Now, generally speaking, this is beneficial for the environment. However, if the option exists between an organic carrot from California and an inorganic carrot grown down the road, the environmental impact of that particular piece of produce, despite the fact that it's organic, might actually be more detrimental than the local piece of produce. In fact, oftentimes if you consider the detrimental cost of importation of agriculture, it makes a lot more sense to eat locally rather than organically. But companies can charge more for food that's organic, so of course we're going to be convinced that organic is the be-all and end-all of healthy living. Which is not to say that organic is necessarily bad. It can be fantastic when done right. But I'm just trying to underscore the importance of consciously understanding, holistically, that which you are buying and why. For example, let's return for a moment to the definition of organic. In order for something to be considered organic from a legally defensible manner, the label must include not only the agency which verified the farm to match the federal qualifications, but also where the produce is from. And if these two things are not present directly on or next to the label, Canada does not recognize it as organic. But companies will often prey on the fact that not many Canadians know what to look for when trying to spot something that's genuinely organic. So they'll label things as organic in the hopes that they can charge you more for things that are essentially indistinguishable, both economically and environmentally. In fact, this problem is actually so pervasive that on the Government of Canada website, it specifies that certain claims, however common, are unsubstantiated. Labels which claim to be 100% organic, certified organic, or made with organic ingredients are either not permitted or considered to be officially misleading by the Canadian organic regime. In fact, the only legitimate label looks like this. Ever seen it? Me neither. The point here is that we're being manipulated by an ulterior motive that's veiled as altruism. And I think it's time we pull back that curtain, because I do still believe that we all genuinely want to help. And I just hope that now we'll have the power to ask the hard questions and discern the deeper truth. So be skeptical and have the courage to go farther than convenient environmentalism. Thank you.
Up next, we have Ken Wiley with his talk titled Lions Are Not Courageous. Ken is an IFMGA mountain guide and a passionate adventure educator who provides adventure programs to help veterans and homeless in his community. He's been faculty at the University of Calgary, Mount Royal University, and Thompson Rivers University in their adventure-based academic programs. He is also the author of the gripping book Buried, which outlines the tragic mountain event which taught him profound lessons in courage. Please welcome Ken Wiley.
Just like you, I'm a student. I'm a student of the concept of courage, and I have been for a really long time. And one of the reasons why I'm a student of courage is that I failed at it deeply. Mainly because I didn't understand entirely what it was. Social courage. It's a facet of the concept of courage. And this image really captures what social courage is about. It's about expressing your truth, even though there's an ocean of people in front of you that think differently. The image is credited to August Landmessier. And what it also communicates is love. He chose not to salute Hitler because he loved. He loved a Jewish woman. In many ways, courage is a portal to love. There are other aspects of courage that are communicated in this photo. It's also physical courage, intellectual courage, moral courage. Generally, if we access the thing that we love in our life, maybe it's ourselves, maybe it's concepts, it will require that we're courageous. Like Rosa Parks. She loved herself enough to not move to the back of the bus. Charles Darwin, he loved science and he loved nature. And he wrote The Origin of Species, but it was gripping for him to publish it. And Bessie Coleman, who loved flying. And she was African American and couldn't get her pilot's license in the United States, so she went to France. Education is not about the acquisition of facts, but learning how to make facts live. Knowing what to do knowledge is knowing what to do, but wisdom is doing it. A show of hands. How many of you in this room have witnessed an unsafe or unjust act and chosen to do nothing. If we're human, we've probably experienced that. I will share with you how I have failed at that. But before I get to that, I'm curious about why is courage, social courage, so rare? Why in that photo of August, why is he the only one? And I think in part it's because we misunderstand what courage is. I'll tell you a story that illustrates this. I was working with a brilliant educator by the name of Dr. Julian Norris. And we're doing an adventure program together. We're going to rappel a group of people off the roof of a building. And some of the people were nervous, so he wanted to help them understand courage in a better way. And what he did was he had everyone pull out a piece of paper and a pen. He said, I want you to draw an animal that you think is courageous. And people drew, all got busy drawing. And then when they were finished drawing, he said, okay, hold your pages up. And he also held his page up. And in the room, there were lions and tigers and elephants and rhinoceroses. And Julian's page had a mouse on it. People looked at his page and they laughed. Mouse courageous? He said, absolutely. A mouse is at the bottom of the food chain. But every day, it leaves its den and goes out and gathers food. The fact of its life is that it needs to eat. And so the mouse makes fast live. Courage is not about not being afraid, not having fear. It's using that fear and the energy of it to transmute it into becoming a lion. I told you that I would share a story about how I have failed at being courageous. In the winter of 2003, I was in a terrible avalanche tragedy that killed 7 people. And this is the image from the crown fracture of the slide. Tons of snow came down on 13 of us, and only 6 of us lived. And I was one of those. And I was guiding. I'll give you a bit of backstory. I was highly competent in the mountains. Still am. And this is a waterfall ice climb that exists up above the town site of Banff, in Banff National Park. And if you look closely on the furthest right-hand climb, you'll see a climber. Gives it a little bit of scale and perspective. Canada is one of the most amazing places to go waterfall ice climbing, and I participated in that for 25 years. I'm still trying to warm up. I always, as a recreational climber, I always reserved the right to turn back when it didn't feel right. But I also wanted to become a mountain guide. And so I started training and taking courses to become a mountain guide. And what I realized really quickly was I was entering into a very different social arena. One that wasn't comfortable with turning back. I also entered into the professional arena where I was being paid to guide. And I also felt the same thing. I also felt a very hierarchical organization to how we operated in the mountains. Now, the problem with hierarchies is that hierarchies lead to chaos, because if one person's at the front leading, they have a field of view about this wide. Generally, if we allow other people to come into into the decision-making process, we widen our field of view, we see more. Hierarchies are great in chaos because taking action is really important, but they're not great when the situation is not chaotic. And I was entering into a very hierarchical situation. We were backcountry ski touring, and backcountry ski touring is incredibly enticing, but one must build a relationship with the snowpack. This skier is skiing up the mountain and it's completely untouched snow, and it looks enticing, but one must have a relationship with the snowpack that's based on facts in order to be there. The snow falls out of the sky, and the more variation in temperature that there is in the season means that there's more layers in the snowpack. If the snow is stable, it's fine to be there. If it's unstable, then it's important to make the decision not to be there. It's learning to make facts live. People get into trouble when they're backcountry skiing because they're so enticed by the turns that they ignore the facts. For me, I was so enticed to becoming a mountain guide that I ignored the facts. I was seeking acceptance from the guy I was working with, and the facts about the snowpack dropped out of view. We were skiing at a backcountry lodge north of Revelstoke, British Columbia, and it's a fly-in lodge, and the aim was to ski up peaks, human-powered from the lodge, and ironically, this peak that we're skiing up on day 3 is named Tumbledown Mountain. Now, if you wrote that in a fictitious account, you would never believe it. The snowpack that year was problematic. In November, after it had snowed through October and early November, it rained to ridgetop, and then it froze really hard, and it put a layer of ice down at the basement of the snowpack. Then the rest of November's snow, and the rest of December's snow, and up until January 20th, about 2.5 meters in total was sitting on top of that ice. And we knew this. Standing at the edge of the slope with my group in behind as an assistant guide, I felt, and this isn't necessarily true, I felt completely disempowered. I thought I did not have a choice, but I did. I could have quit on the spot, which is probably what it would have taken, because the person I was working for did not invite other opinions. Now, we could go into the ethics of that. Certainly in complex, high-risk environments, it's not necessarily an ethical thing, but for me, I needed to believe that I had a choice, and I didn't. Every cell in my body was telling me, don't go out there. But I wanted to become a mountain guide. I wanted the acceptance of the lead guide. I perceived that I had to. I lacked the social courage that it took to speak up. And so I brought my group out. And as soon as everybody was exposed, the slope settled and slid, and 13 of us were buried. It's a profoundly humbling thing to be buried. But it felt metaphorical. I was burying myself by not authentically showing up and sharing what I believed. These 7 people died, and the social impact ended up being huge. Even today, these families miss these individuals. Many years after the event, I finally sat down to write about it. And what I discovered was that my lifetime of adventure was trying to teach me about social courage. Stories emerged that were showing me that I had smaller encounters with the potential of me sharing what was important to me and not stepping into situations that I felt were dangerous. Two things that I learned through the writing process and as a student of courage. Whatever I'm afraid of facing gets bigger. It always gets bigger. If we fail to learn a lesson, it expands. The other thing that I know to be a truth is that as I've gotten older, it's harder to be courageous because I've got more to lose. Got a house, maybe a little bit of savings. So it gets harder as we get older to be courageous. Think back to the event that caused you to put your hand up. Your opportunity now and your homework is when that crosses your lifetime desktop, take action. Courage is the doorway to love and our humanity. And it affects the health and wellness of our society. Remember, the next time you're faced with a situation where you feel a little bit of fear, it's not about being a lion. It's about being that mouse and doing it anyway. Thank you.
Next up, we have Gord Bilston, a technician for energy and water savings for Brentwood College School for the past 20 years. Gord also develops an advanced geothermal loop heating system for the school as well. The title of his talk is The Tiny Blue Speck, which is centered around energy management ideas and policies for the planet. Let's give a round of applause for Gord.
Good morning. The first thing I'm going to do here is put a little slide up on the screen, and there will be an audio portion that goes with that. I'd appreciate it if you just concentrate on what you're seeing on the screen and listen carefully to the audio portion as well. I'm trying to get our collective heads into the same thought process here before we start discussing things. So if you just bear with it, it only takes a few minutes. Thanks.
If you look at Earth from space, you see a dot. That's here. That's home. That's us. On it, everyone you ever heard of, every human being who ever lived out their lives, the aggregate of all our joys and sufferings, thousands of confident religions, ideologies, and economic doctrines, every hunter and forager, every hero and coward, every creator and destroyer of civilizations, every king and peasant, every young couple in love, every hopeful child, every mother and father, every inventor and explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every superstar, every supreme leader, every saint and sinner in the history of our species lived there on a mote of dust. Earth is a very small stage in a vast cosmic arena. Think of the rivers of blood spilled by all those generals and emperors, so that in glory and in triumph, they could become the momentary masters of a fraction of a dot. Think of the endless cruelties visited by the inhabitants of one corner of the dot on scarcely distinguishable inhabitants of some other corner of the dot. How frequent their misunderstandings, how eager they are to kill one another, how fervent their hatreds. Our posturings, our imagined self-importance, the delusion that we have some privileged position in the universe are challenged by this point of pale light. Our planet is a lonely speck in the great enveloping cosmic dark. In our obscurity, in all this vastness, there is no hint that help will come from elsewhere to save us from ourselves. It's up to us. It's been said that astronomy is a humbling, and I might add, character-building experience. To my mind, there is perhaps no better demonstration of the folly of human conceits than this distant image of our tiny world. To me, it underscores our responsibility to deal more kindly and compassionately with one another, and to preserve and cherish that pale blue dot, the only home we've ever known.
Both the picture and the audio portion of this was done by a guy by the name of Carl Sagan. Dr. Sagan was a fairly famous astronomer and physicist at the end of the 20th century. He's since passed away. But he was a really fairly important guy. He was the one that actually convinced NASA to turn their camera around and take that picture. Now, what I take away from this anyway is all our little petty squabbles and all our little disagreements, both personally and globally, really pale to insignificance when compared to the future of the little biology experiment we've got going on here right now called the human race. The entire thing is in peril right now, and the only way to make any progress here at all is everybody, and I mean everybody, me, you, the people on the other side of the planet, everybody has to get on the same page and get this stuff underway. I've been working on this around here for, like they told you, 20 years or so now. And we've proven beyond the shadow of doubt, and I've got reams of data that I've bored a number of you with over the years. Your lucky day, I'm not going to do it today. But we can prove that the shift to a non-carbon-based fuel system works. Non-carbon-based fuel in this province is hydroelectricity. It works really, really well here because we have enough water to perpetuate it. Now, everybody's going, oh, well, we should put up some solar cells and we'll get off the grid. Yeah, okay. So we tried. We did it. Just on the building next door, I've got more reams of really boring data for years showing that in the summertime, they work super. They're a really good thing. They generate electricity like crazy. Today, you couldn't run the lights in this room with what we get from solar. So is that going to become a viable energy source in the future? Maybe in Nevada, but not here. What I'm asking from you people is, you're the next engineers, designers, thinkers, philosophers. We need you to start thinking of solutions for this problem right now. Time's a wasting. We don't have a whole bunch of time here. It's already been legislated that by 2030, which is really not that far away, seems like a long time for you guys, but you'd be really surprised how fast 10 years goes, everybody's gonna have to start buying electric cars. Yay, everybody's cheering, wonderful, great idea, we're gonna stop using gasoline. What no one's considered yet is, how do we get there? How do we actually make this happen? Where's the infrastructure right now? You can't just whip into the 7-Eleven and plug your car in. I mean, there's a couple of spots at Brentwood College. I think we've got, what, a total of 4. So we can't even accommodate our own staff members here. How do we do that? We want to get rid of hundreds of thousands of liters of gasoline usage every single day and replace it with electricity. But we just don't have that much electricity to go around. We got to generate more. So in the spirit of what goes around comes around, let's just assume that we could build enough dams to generate that amount of power in BC to supply all our new electrical needs as we shift the industrial sector as well as the residential sector and the motor vehicle sector onto a non-carbon fuel source. Whose property are we going to flood? How many people are we going to displace? What are you willing to do to achieve this goal? The other big problem is, what happens east of the Rockies? Between there and Quebec, there's virtually no hydroelectricity. It's all coal-fired and oil-fired generating plants. What do we do for those people? Where's all their electricity going to come from? They're all going to have to buy electric cars too, and they're going to plug them in. But guess what? All you did was rob Peter to pay Paul. All the carbon that was coming out of your car isn't anymore, but now there's going to be way more coming out of the generating plant that's fired by the same damn fuel that your car was. You didn't get anywhere. It goes back to the convenient consumerism topic that was on earlier. It makes the person driving the car feel a lot better, but are they actually doing anything? No, not really. Your electricity has to be from a clean source as well. Otherwise, the whole point is moot. It just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Another problem that we're going to have to deal with at this point is this oil and gas petrochemical industry thing. It's just small potatoes, right? There's almost no money in that at all. But we're asking them globally to shut themselves down and go out of business. $1 trillion industry that is just supposed to vaporize and go away overnight. I was watching the news this morning before I came over here, and there's already people in the oil and gas industry in Alberta that are starting to worry about their future, about their jobs, about their children's ability to eat, because we're starting to close it down. And it's going to be a serious problem. And you guys are the ones that are going to have to figure out how to deal with this. Because another 10 years from now, I won't just be marginally useless, I'll be really useless. So you guys need to figure out what it is you're going to do here. And there's one other little depressing fact I just thought I'd throw in here as well. Even if we did build enough dams in BC and flood the entire damn province to supply power, nice clean power to the rest of the country, the percentage of Canadians versus the entire population of the world is somewhere less than 1%. So what's our total impact there? Once again, doodly. But the bright side is, if you can develop the technology here to actually make it work, for the rest of the world, they will follow. If we could get it up and running at a proven model, somehow, whatever that solution is to make that work, whether it's nuclear reactors, hydrogen fuel cells, God knows what it could be, or some new creation you guys come up with. We'll harness the 600,000 lightning strikes that hit the planet every day. That's probably enough power to juice up the whole world. How do you get it? I don't know. It's not going to be easy. But that's the sort of stuff I'm asking you guys to start thinking about now, because by the time you're my age and start thinking about it then, it's way too late. You guys got to get out there, start thinking about it, start talking to each other. Don't just leave it to the techie guys, the science nerds. All you poets and actors and dancers out there have ideas and thoughts too. And it only takes one idea from one person, one time, to reach the right ears, to impact significant change. So just keep the conversation going, keep talking to each other, and hopefully we'll figure this one out, because we really don't have any choice. Thank you.
I'm going to get you to come out and give you your gift. Everybody, that's the end of our first session. But before we go, I'd like to have Gord come back out, because he's not going to be here for the whole session today. And I'd like Sarah to bring him out a gift, and let's hear it for Gord.
Enjoy the rest of your presentations. Thank you.
All right, so that's the end of the first session. Now we're going to have a break for 20 minutes. Okay, so it gives you a chance to go out. Their food services has put a lot of food there. Listen up, please. No going back to the houses, and we're back here in 20 minutes. All right? So there'll be an announcement. Go and talk about what you've seen.
Welcome back, everybody. Speaking next is Carla Förster with her talk titled Living Your Values Out Loud. She hails from Shuswap, BC. She's a possibility thinker and an active dreamer. Carla found her voice through the development of her company, Frog Friendly Coffee. She's committed to living her values out loud by providing a humane being for human beings. Please welcome Carla Förster.
Hi, everyone. I'm not your typical business owner. Everything about what I do is a reflection of my values and how I see the world. Through observations, growing up, with the blessedness of being a Canadian and traveling and being able to sort of have that comparison of the reality of our food producers and what is an ethical business. My road to developing Frog has started with this sort of voice in me working as a plumber and a landscaper and bouncing around as a waitress, of just a voice inside of myself that was just compelling me that there was something more. And I've been very blessed. I've had the experience to have wonderful parents who are actually here today that have an intense love for Mexico and shared that with us through holidays growing up. And one of my most important things I think that I've come to realize in this journey is that we are all fallible. We all learn by mistakes. And it's the relationships and those experiences that come from that journey that make life worth living. And life is so special that if you're not capturing it and making every moment count, even the uncomfortable ones, and defining your character and your values to live your values out loud, you've just wasted that lifetime. And I've committed myself to a journey that has been almost equal parts. We started almost 14 years ago on a dream, and my spirit, Hermano, Pedro, and I started this from developing a relationship through our trips to Port Escondido, Oaxaca, and always talking about what we could do. Oaxaca is heaven on earth. It is home of the last intact cloud forest of Mexico. It is biodiversity on steroids. It's precious, and it's home to 127 really distinct indigenous cultures that are very proud and very focused on preserving their culture. And having the gift of being able to experiencing that and having that relationship to Pedro to share that dream, we slowly developed this idea that we would import this coffee that my family would bring home in garbage bags from our holidays. And it had always been, harvested wrong, milled wrong. It was often roasted in the camels, the open stone circles over open fire, but it tasted great. And for Pedro and I, it was galvanizing. It was something that would bring us together with this shared dream and this really deep purpose in ourselves that we wanted to leave a lasting legacy. And that's what we've been working hard to do for the last 14 years. Cloud forests are really special. Every meter in a cloud forest, the baseline ecosystem changes. So you'll see a rapid change in the kind of frogs you see, the kind of bugs, and it's something that's really worth preserving, especially when Oaxaca is ground zero for the discovery of vanilla and chocolate. It is the only place in the world that vanilla is pollinated by a bee and not a paintbrush. And its culture is so rich that they actually estimate that they've only discovered about 60% of the ancient ruins in Oaxaca because it is so underdeveloped, because it is so mountainous. There's vanilla right there. I think it's just magic when you think that this vanilla just takes over, and when you think of ourselves as Canadians and our place of comfort, vanilla is an incredibly labor-intensive crop that provides very little return for producers and generates a lot of hardship. But like coffee, we take so much comfort. And my goal with Pedro, my spirit Hermano, is to bring that together in that we are walking the walk and endeavoring to do business in a manner that honors all those things that feel so special to us at source. We wouldn't have gotten off the ground without this beautiful, beautiful old man, Simitrio. He is a signpost of my life. He started with us when we were just learning coffee and growing up. And he was an amazing facilitator. He is the keeper of the forest for his people when he was with us. He understood coffee, and for Pedro, he was a defining relationship. He taught him all about coffee. He provided, lessons and an understanding around forest management and providing Pedro with that support that he could find that courage for us to embark on our dream. He lived in this amazing ancient village called Nopala. It's actually one of the oldest continually inhabited villages in the world. And he was the keeper of the forest for his people. And he would go and buy our coffee from these beautiful families in the communities that harvested the coffee from their sort of 5 or 10 hectares of forest. And then he would store it in his home, literally sleeping with our coffee beans. He spent 8 years with us, and talking about him still brings a lot of emotion. He was such a meant-to-be relationship, and those meant-to-be relationships are so important in our journey. And the mistakes we make, there's always so many, and some of them are those moments, and that's something I think about a lot, is our human nature is when something goes wrong is we finger point. We immediately look for the best person to blame or the best scenario to sort of put that pressure over to. And that's something I've really worked hard at, and I've suffered a couple really big mistakes. Pedro and I, years ago, actually went through a year where we couldn't even speak to each other. I can't even tell you why we were mad at each other now. But it was a moment where my dad had to step in and help us navigate it to keep the pieces together. And I'm so grateful we made it. But the biggest mistake I've actually ever made was something that I really pushed for and wouldn't listen to any suggestions about, and it was my frustration that our packaging in coffee, because it's high barrier, has to come from Asia, and it has a tremendous environmental footprint. And my goal was to have a product that was packaged in Canada by materials produced in Canada, and my solution was to offer our coffee in a 100% post-consumer box with an inside bag that was 100% recyclable. And it was a great idea, but it bombed. I lost some major business. We ate a lot of packaging that we ended up recycling. But it was one of those moments for myself where I had to dig so deep to be able to own it without finger pointing, because I really believe that's a superpower. And take that deep breath to be able to navigate what's next. How do I recover from this? I've lost 30% of my business. And I was very fortunate. I've got great relationships in the business. I'm very blessed with the distributors that I have. And it was really the mettle of just buckling down to fight through and swallow this mistake. And it's sort of funny, the slide I have up is actually a clearance from London Drugs, which was our biggest loss in that learning period. Those meant-to-be relationships, I speak to that all the time, and I always wonder, I often think about, am I here because this was what I was meant to build and develop, or am I here because I have the mettle? And I have this very strong internal faith that the universe has your back. But I think the universe has your back when you commit and you focus and you're completely just zeroed in on the process of what you want to accomplish. It doesn't matter the detractors, the people that say, oh, you're crazy, you don't have the experience, you don't know what you're doing. It's finding that inner voice, defining your character. And I think the challenge of developing something for yourself that reflects living your values out loud. One of the funny things that I really love that sort of builds my passion is Oaxaca is where my soul lives. It's where I find myself. But the food industry that we live in is interesting. It's actually funny. My husband will not generally grocery shop with me because I can turn a 15-minute shopping experience into an hour-long experience. And it's because I'm fascinated by marketing. I really feel like packaging in all of its formats is an underappreciated, undervalued art form. We, as producers and speaking to producers in my community, when you don't make that mark and that collaboration hasn't been successful, your product doesn't end up in the grocery cart. But when you do, it is such a profound speaking to all the right pieces coming together, the beautiful harmony of a team sharing just the right elements, And I think that what's coming more and more important is the truth in marketing, because that's one area that I think we really struggle in our consumer culture. And that's something that's the most important thing to me, is that our coffee reflects the values, the story, the commitment of our team, who we are, what we're trying to translate to the general public. And this package is a package I'm really proud of, because it speaks to what's most important to me, which is humane beings for human beings, which is a call out that living present, honoring all life, treading consciously, and living so inspired that you in turn inspire others. And that's a really important call out for me, because that is always what reminds me of, in this cluttered category of coffee, of why I do what I do, why I do what I do that is different from everybody else. It's funny, everybody's like, why are you in coffee, Carla? It's the most competitive category. And it's like, cream always rises. And I truly believe that if you are focused on your intention, who you are, living your values out loud, it doesn't matter how many people inhabit a space that you're trying to be successful in. It's all you. I've had an amazing experience with the students here at Brentwood, and over the last 24 hours, it's been really neat and really reassuring for me in chatting with the students in just that comfort with our uncertain times, that we have world changers. I am just so profoundly impressed with all of you. And I wish you all just to find your frog, get out there, live your values out loud, make your life count, be everything you can be. Thank you so much for your time. Frog on.
Okay, coming to the stage next, we have Maher Aurora. He is in his grade 11 year at Brentwood, but is currently from San Francisco. He's from an Indian American family which focused on teachings of spirituality. His talk is titled Karma and How We Create It, and it will talk about his experience with karma and its principles. Please welcome him to the stage again.
All right. In an effort to get good karma for this talk, I put $50 underneath one of your chairs. So, nah, I'm joking. I didn't actually do that, I'm sorry. All right. Let me start by telling you a simple story about a life-changing tea-making experience. It was a Sunday morning, and I was making tea for my parents. Nothing special, right? You get the milk, you get the tea bag, you heat the water, get some sugar, mix it all together. It takes about 10 minutes of work. For me, though, it was an ordeal. For not only had I never made tea before, but this was the most significant thing I'd done in the kitchen in my 15 years of existence. So there I was, tea connoisseur Maher, making my parents the elixir of life. I felt like Harry Potter casting his first spell. I expected nothing but the utmost gratitude as I proceeded to bestow my creation to my mother. But no, there she was, my mother, seated comfortably on the couch, who took my tea and continued reading. Honestly, it was pretty disrespectful. I was essentially a barista at this point, and I thought to myself, wow, this lady didn't even thank me. You're welcome, I fired back, ready to get schooled about good manners. My mom said something profound that morning, something that has transformed my perspective on my actions. She said, "Beta," the endearing Indian term to scold your child, "you didn't do anything. Farmers in Africa planted the tea. Lipton packaged it and brought it over to Whole Foods, where I went and picked it up." And as painful as it was to accept that my 10-minute ordeal was really worth nothing, it was simply true. Millions of people and hundreds and thousands of little moving parts had come together to get that tea to me, those ingredients to me, that when you look at it, it seemed as though I didn't do anything. Yet I was still unconvinced that I couldn't take credit for at least being a little part of the tea-making ceremony. And thus, 2 reasons prompted me to research what my mother said. 1, I'm a nerd, and 2, I am confident that I made that tea. So I proceeded to, it took me 3 months to internalize what she said until I finally found my answer in the theory of karma. And this theory is not the one you might see propagated in pop culture. Often we see things like people cutting off other people in traffic and immediately getting a ticket, or people living their life with the idea that karma is a positive state that they want to be in. The popular notion of karma is that a person does something good or bad and is faced with the negative or positive ramifications of the morality of those actions based on the morality of them. And before studying the true theory of karma, I held this view as well. But today I'm here to tell you 1, why this view is only partially correct, 2, the true theory behind karma, and 3, what this means for everyday lives. I know this may be a lot, so just bear with me. All right, so I soon learned that this was a frequent misconception, and that while this side of karma does exist based on the morality of our actions, there's an entirely different side that has nothing to do with our actions. You see, humans are in their happiest state when they're acting for other people. And when we're in this state of acting for other people and are not looking to get anything out of it, but rather are so indistinguishable from the act itself that we become the act, this state can be characterized as flow by researcher Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. So when we're in this flow, that's when we're helping others without any thought. And karma is created when we disrupt this flow. And the way we disrupt this flow is by putting ego into our actions. And this ego is something that exists within everyone, that acts like a sense of doership, or exists when we take credit for our actions. To explain further, karma can be created at 3 stages. These are before, during, and after an action. At these 3 different stages, the manifestation of ego alters the outcome of our actions because we are disrupting this flow. When we create karma before an action, that is when we have the urge to help, but decide not to due to our own comfort and belief that helping someone else would disrupt that comfort. This could be like if a friend asked me for help on their homework and I said no because I'm too busy watching the latest episode of Riverdale in bed. Or if I was asked to help clean the house, but I'm too tired and I want to sleep. So when we disrupt this urge to help, we create karma. Now, if someone were to ask me to help them move furniture and I asked for something in return, that would be the second way in which we create karma. That is when we want to help and we decide to help, but we put our own selfish needs into the action. The last way in which we create karma is when we do the action and we complete our urge to help, but after the action we take credit for doing it. This could be like me taking credit for making the tea for my mom. So these 3 ways that we put our ego into our actions is how we create karma and how we disrupt this flow. What I just said could be modeled like this. So action plus ego equals karma. You see, the next time you're making tea, you should keep in mind that all you're doing is aggregating the contents created by millions of other people and creating the illusion for you and others that you yourself are the person making the tea. For all practical purposes then, imagine if you had no utensils, no gas, no power, and no ingredients, and I asked you to make a cup of tea. What would that tea look like? That's the point. You see, karma is something you create when you foster the illusion that you did something. So the next time you create tea, keep in mind that you shouldn't create karma. And we often live in a state where we're looking for what others can do for us versus what we can do for others. And this is what leads to the creation of karma a majority of the time. So how do we shift our minds from one where we're looking at what others can do for us to one where we're looking at what we can do for others? The answer for this lies in gratitude. When we have gratefulness for the opportunities and privileges that we are given, we are able to reduce the amount of karma that we create or completely negate it altogether, making the equation turn into something more like this. So, how can we be grateful for things like homework and chores when they're just so mentally taxing? Simply changing our mindset from, I have to do this, to, I get to do this, allows for us to act without the creation of karma. Now, creating karma isn't something that we would consider bad, as it's not something that we would consider morally wrong. The only problem with creating karma is that we're removing ourselves from the state from which we are the happiest. So on that fateful Sunday morning, as I was chatting with my mom, I learned that while helping others is good, when we lack gratitude, it is to our own detriment. And as I was that unloved barista, little did I know that I would be here today talking to you about my journey. So thank you all for surviving my tea ordeal, and thank you, Mom, for not saying thank you and instead teaching me this profound lesson.
All right. Now we're going to show a quick TED video by Matt Cutts titled Try Something New for 30 Days. All right. Next up, we have Dr. Erica Harris with her talk titled Own Every Second. Visiting from West Vancouver, she's a highly seasoned survivor and passionate founder of RiseToday.com. Erica is a mindset coach, a motivational speaker, and a best-selling author. She's also a dedicated volunteer for the West Coast Kids Cancer Society and the Lymphoma Society of Canada. On top of all this, Erica also sits on the board of Zilly Women's Health. Please put your hands together for Dr. Erica Harris.
Hello. Just 2 months to live. Just days after my 36th birthday, with 2 babies in tow, I was told I had just 2 months to live. If I told you right here, right now, that you had just 60 days left to live, would you live this moment any differently? Where would you begin? What would you do? I didn't know. I didn't know where to begin. I didn't know how to bottle my vim and vigor for life, or my fierce love for these 2 babies. I had so much to do. I had so much to say. I had so much life to live. When crisis strikes, it can knock us down with the force of a tidal wave, leaving us breathless, aghast, and swirling in that great big undertow. It takes with it no regard for our many hopes, dreams, or goals ahead. It does not discriminate for age, for race, for gender, or for socioeconomic class. We are all prey. Even the strongest and the bravest become unraveled, vulnerable, isolated, and seemingly lost. Crisis often takes with it the story we once knew of ourselves. I know this all far too well, as the story I once knew of myself was brutally ripped away by crisis. In my previous life, as I've often come to call it, I had lived a life passionate about health and wellness. I had even established a very successful career in this very arena as a thriving sports chiropractor. I had owned and operated my own well-renowned multidisciplinary health center in the heart of Vancouver's West Side. I inspired my community to attain its best health status, and I certainly practiced what I preached. I was incredibly fit. I hiked every mountain and soared down them all on my skis. I was very happily married. I served as a doting young mom to my 2 wee precious boys. I was still nursing my youngest. We lived in a huge, happy home at the end of a cul-de-sac, and our home was filled with family, friends, with great music and great food. We were truly living the dream. But seemingly, in the blink of an eye, my strong foundation of healthy living and positivity was rocked to its very core. I assure you, cancer was not on my agenda. But at the age of 35, I somehow found myself diagnosed with what proved to be a very aggressive version of acute myeloid leukemia. I hadn't even complained of feeling sick or unwell, and yet I was admitted to our province's largest hospital within hours of this bombshell, within hours of the world as I knew it being ripped away from under my feet. No one ever tells you just how hard it will be when your lights go out and you are left in the bleak of the dark. I somehow found myself swirling in that great big undertow. I had no clue of all that was to lie ahead. Immediately, I was connected to tubes and wires, dispensing countless medications, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Every step I took, 2 huge pools of medications and wires galore came in tow. I was soon covered in bruises on my shins and on my forearms from spending days, weeks on end in a fetal position, retching endlessly. I was kept alive by the kindness of strangers who donated endless transfusions. I endured multiple rounds of septic shock and spiking high fevers. I slowly started to lose every part of the muscle that I once had worked so hard to acquire. I slowly started to lose every part of me that I had once recognized as me. And as brutally hard as the days were, the nights were that much harder. I would lay awake, terrified at night, just to close my eyes to sleep, that they would never come to open again. Terrified at what the next minute, hour, or day ahead would come to bring, as I had already endured so much. I had already lost all 10 fingernails and all 10 toenails and every hair on my head. I had the most profuse drenching of night sweats, causing me to change the bedding more than a dozen times each and every night. I prayed for mercy. Please take mercy on my soul. But despite the unimaginable hardships and the immense and the obvious indignities, I believed wholeheartedly that a positive mindset would ensure my success and my survival. In today's society, there's almost this inherent societal pressure to be positive amidst anything that comes our way. I once resonated with this wholeheartedly, and in keeping with this mantra, I entertained over 60 guests per day, and I served as the hostess with the mostest. Come watch me on my exercise bike. What's your cocktail of choice for my water fountain? Ice or no ice? I consider this all just to be a blip on the path. Head down, focus, eye on the prize. I would be fine in no time, or so I thought. I tried so desperately not to let in the hurt. But then one day it all hit. We had to hire this new nanny, and she brought my boys in for a visit. I was suddenly struck by the presence of this total stranger having access to our family's most vulnerable and most intimate of moments. She left to take my boys home, and I watched them leave the building below from my bird's eye view above. I watched her load my kids into my van, and I panicked. Would she buckle their seatbelts properly? Would she shoulder check as she changed lanes on the way home? Would she speed? My mind raced. Did she know what truly precious cargo she had on board? I wanted to be the one driving my babies home. I wanted to tuck them in that night, but I was trapped. I watched my van drive away with my boys, and my heart literally drove away with them. It was the most physically intense pain I've ever come to experience, before or since that moment. I turned around from that window, all alone in my stark room. I slunk down towards the floor with my back pressed against the wall. I hugged my knees close into my chest, and I wept. And I wept, and I wept, and I wept, and I didn't stop for days. It was the first time I had allowed myself the space to truly grieve the loss that all that crisis had ripped away. Missing my big boy's 5th birthday party. Abruptly having to halt nursing. Missing the chance to greet my boys with smiles and hugs at the start of each new day. I had to honor these very real feelings rather than hide behind them in this code of honor of so-called positivity. Little did I know, but that proved to be the key to allowing my own authentic and very genuine positivity to shine through. Little did I know then, but that proved to be the key in my healing. But in today's society, we are often seen as weak if we allow ourselves the space to do this. But I've come to learn that showing our colors of vulnerability is what truly shows our colors of strength. It's only in that moment that we no longer, in that moment when we are most powerful, is that very moment we no longer need to be powerful. But this mighty lesson almost came too late. And despite my most valiant of efforts, I only grew sicker. I somehow did not respond to even the harshest of chemotherapy regimens available, known as salvage chemotherapy. It's known as the end-of-the-line treatment of cancer, literally the Hail Mary treatment. In turn, I was awarded a 2-month terminal prognosis. I was denied all further medical care aside from palliative care. This prognosis was further confirmed by another leading leukemia institute in the United States of America. Sounds came out of me that I didn't know existed. My boys were so tiny. If I had 2 months to live, I had a lot of living to do. I fought to go home rather than going to the palliative floor. On the home front, if my babies were awake, I soaked in every minute with them, heart by heart, side to side. If they were sleeping, I made memory books, video recordings, and wrote heartfelt letters, all while tears would stream down my face, knowing well the milestones I would come to miss. In preparing for the worst, I always expected the best. And in turn, my fight of fights began. I pursued any and everything in the natural health care realm to get healthy. Green juicing, meditation, yoga, visualization, the power of prayer. I did it all. I'm not sure if I'm standing before you today because of all of these efforts, or because of a gift from above, or because I was enveloped with forces of love from all corners of the world, or simply because of my very fierce yearning to get to be mama. But I'm thrilled to get to share with you that because of my efforts in the natural healthcare realm, I did attain a very glorious and a very miraculous remission. Only then was I able to serve as a candidate for a life-saving bone marrow transplant, which serves as a cure to prevent against relapse from such an aggressive leukemia. My only brother proved not to be a match, sadly, and in turn, a worldwide search was hailed on my behalf to find a suitable donor. Miraculously, that perfect donor was found halfway around the world. A complete stranger rose to help from Germany in my time of need. I only came to learn of his name years later. His last name, Hope, so fitting for all of the hope he brought on my path. Hope not just to survive, but hope to truly thrive. I'm sure pronounced very differently in his home country of Germany as Hoppe, but it means hope all the same to me. And here he is, my family's superhero. It's a story of the world coming together. Never forget, we may not be able to change the world individually, but we can all change the world for one individual, as he did for me. I grew back, with all of this mighty hope, I grew back to hiking every mountain and soaring down them all on my skis. I was incredibly physically fit once again. My blood type even changed from O negative to A positive, which I thought was an amazing score on that test. But this burst of good health was sadly short-lived. The rise and fall continued. As my physical strength improved, my cardiovascular strength seemed to take a steep and steady decline. I literally just lost my breath. We soon realized my new immune system had decided it didn't recognize my own lungs. And it embarked on this fierce process of rejection, attacking my own lungs as if they were a cold or a flu. And my new strong immune system did a very thorough job. I fell to 84 pounds. I was prescribed full-time oxygen. I eventually lost my vision with the harsh medications. I couldn't read. I couldn't drive. I couldn't exercise. I couldn't even watch a movie as I could barely see. I was told my only chance of survival would be a double lung transplant. For something amazing to happen to me, something terrible had to happen to someone else. How does one come to grapple with this? Merely surviving each day became a feat all on its own. But exactly 3 years to the very day that I was told I had just 2 months to live, I received the call of calls saying new lungs were awaiting me. Because of the kindness and generosity bestowed upon me by the family of another who made their most trying of decisions amidst their most trying of times, I was gifted the gift of new lungs. I could finally breathe, a gift we also readily take for granted. In a tumultuous 3 years, I had come to stand not only as a survivor of a once expected 2-month terminal prognosis, but further as the very humbled and honored recipient of both a bone marrow transplant and subsequently a double lung transplant. Surely I would now be back on my track. But even more unexpected complications were to follow. I spent another year admitted to hospital. I would fight to get out every day to pick up my babies from school. to make a home-cooked meal, and to cheer them on at after-school sports. I needed to keep my sense of purpose in this great big world. I would dress as if I felt well. I felt it made me feel even better. I would often be asked by other hospital staff throughout the building what floor I worked on. But rather, I would come to reply I was a full-time resident. But because of the immense support from the hospital staff and from friends and family far and wide, I grew strong once again, despite every odd against me to do so. I was finally back at home, able to greet my boys with smiles and hugs at the start of each new day. But the rise and fall even continued. 6 weeks later, after finally being home, it was clear the trials and tribulations of the Armageddon of storms that we had navigated all proved too great for my once happy marriage to withstand, and my husband asked for a divorce. Did you know that 50% of marriages do not withstand a cancer diagnosis? I didn't. They certainly don't tell you that at diagnosis when you're holding your husband's hand. Nor did I know that a married woman facing a cancer diagnosis is in fact 6 times more likely to face separation or divorce as compared to a married man facing the same diagnosis. Shocking. Never once did I think my happy marriage would fall prey to these ugly statistics. I had often described my husband as the man others aspired to be. But cancer affects the whole family. More resources need to be allocated to better serve these families of young, sick parents. I'm passionately working to spearhead initiatives on this very mission as we speak. But despite how well I look and feel standing before you today, there are still nights now when I awaken startled and gasping for air. I pat the bed frantically, trying desperately to ascertain my safety and my surroundings. I feel for the tubes that once held me captive. I feel for the tubes that were once connected to every part of me. I feel for the handcuffs that once held me captive to my ICU bed. I hear the beeps and the buzzes and the screams of agony from the patients down the hall. I feel for my pelvis, for where I was drilled to the very core, time and time again, wide awake for every gut-wrenching turn of that drill. I was left with bruises for well over 3 years to follow. I remember every little bit of what I endured with those 4 white walls staring back at me. But then I slowly start to see that the walls now staring back at me are not white, but rather brightly colored pink. Fuchsia, in fact. I remember I intentionally painted my bedroom walls this very color to serve as a stark contrast to these very moments. These pink walls give me all the comfort I need to know that I am safe, I am alive, I am well. Most would refer to these moments as traditional post-traumatic stress attacks, as they certainly are. But I have come to call them my gratitude attacks. Gratitude for the chance to still get to be called mama. Gratitude for the chance to still get to live, to laugh, and to love with my boys each and every day. Gratitude for the chance to still get to be their loudest cheerleader. I choose to focus on the blessings. I choose to find the silver linings. It's a choice I make each and every day. My finances have been very harshly impacted, but yet I've come to realize I have everything I could ever want right in my very arms when I hold my boys. We no longer live in that big, beautiful home, but we've come to love our cozy cottage 3-bedroom apartment. We no longer have that family unit of 4 that I once held so dear. Yet our little trio of 3 has the tightest of bonds. I can no longer serve in the profession that was truly made for me. Yet I get to be here with you today. I can no longer hike up those mountains, but I can still ski down them side by side with my loves every step of the way. We smile away the whole way down. Despite the very obvious hardships on this journey, I feel infinitely blessed. I get to be here today with you. I have started this journey as a caterpillar, but I've come to emerge a butterfly. I have grown my wings to fly, and I have deepened my roots of strength. I get to be 43 years old with fresh career opportunities ahead and fresh relationship opportunities ahead. How lucky am I? I want to take a moment to honor a few fallen heroes who would also like to get to be here with us today. My dear friend Nicole, who would love to see her boy Bodie now in grade 4. He's recently signed up for singing lessons, and I know well Nicole would love to be in the front row cheering him on in his upcoming performance in December. My dear friend Eileen, who would have loved to have celebrated Thanksgiving with her beautiful family and grandchildren. My friend Matthew, who would love to get to serve as the amazing example that he was for his 4 beautiful boys growing. My friend Matt, who would love to be in this room with us today, sitting in the audience right alongside his beautiful wife Serena, who is also here too. My friend Nicole, who would love to get one more opportunity to do one more camping trip with her son, Colin. What they would give just for one more day. You too get to be here today. So the next time you find yourself frustrated over life's daily ebbs and flows, choose the lens through which you choose to see things. Choose happy. Choose gratitude. You too get to sit in traffic. Just turn up that music, sing it out, and sink into the now. Stop worrying about where you think you should be and enjoy where you are right here, right now. You get to go to work. You get to go to school. You get to navigate all of life's chaotic days. You get to choose the lens through which you see it all through. Choose happy. Choosing happy means you choose the brightest lens to see it through. But just like perfecting your latest piano performance or your soccer dribble, this takes practice to make perfect. It takes an active choice that you must make each and every day. It takes commitment that then just flows out of us naturally. See it, feel it, believe it. And never forget the mindset we hold is our most powerful tool. But this happiness habit is only successful if you allow yourself this space to grieve all the hardships along the way. It's the only way that we can truly allow our true and genuine positivity to shine forth. I hope my story is one that you will not forget. I hope my story moves you to go home and to hold the ones you love a little tighter. I hope my story ignites you to live a richer and brighter life, truly soaking in the moments of now. I pray my story will serve as a light to your dark and will serve as a beacon of hope when all hope seems lost. Life is beautiful. Life is hard. Be real, my friends. Go live it, love it, and let your bright light shine. Own every second of the gift we are gifted in today. Thank you.
So before the break here, just like last session, one of our speakers is going to be leaving after the intermission here. So I'd like Carla Firster to come out, and maybe we can give her a round of applause. Thank her for being here today. And we have a nice gift for you. That was great. So let's take a look at the time here. So we got 20 minutes, so we're going to get you guys back in here in 20 minutes, so listen for the chimes. Last intermission, speaker's going to come out again. There's food, all the stuff in the other break. Go to the photo booth, go to the photo screen, talk about what you just heard, and we'll see you back here in 20 minutes. Thank you, guys.
wasn't for you, I never would have even made it here. So thank you.
Okay, so our last student speaker is Didi Olatunbosun. She is, cheer it on, and she has been at Brentwood for the past 3 years and has made her mark as an avid volleyball and rugby player, but is most recognized this year as our head prefect. Didi was born in Houston, Texas, and then raised in Nigeria, Canada, and is currently living in Saudi Arabia. She prides herself in being a self-proclaimed nomad. Her talk is titled Beyond the Playlist, so without further ado, let's give a warm welcome to Didi.
Okay. Raise your hand if you've cried at least once in the past month. Okay, good. Okay. Okay. Now, raise your hand if you've cried in the past week. Okay. And let's go for a stretch. Who's cried at least once in the past day? Cute. Okay. First of all, I want to say that's awesome. Being emotional and readily able to let out frustration, feel sadness, or express joy, it's one of the most beautiful things the human body is capable of. The thing is, sometimes, a lot of the time, the human mind can take dominance over that function. In elementary school, don't mean to flex, but it's kind of the queen of the playground. Grounders, kickball, laps around the field, you name it, I was good at it. One day, I was playing soccer with the boys in my 4th grade class. Everything was going well, passes were on point, opening up, flattening out, all that good stuff. And then I got hit in the face with the ball. And it wasn't your regular black and white checkered soccer ball. No, it was the partially deflated, solid colored ones. That kick hurt it, but did I cry? No. Did I scream? No. Did I wipe my bloody nose on my sleeve and carry on? Absolutely. The boys went crazy. They thought I was this invincible being incapable of feeling pain or anguish, and I ate it all up. Every piece of attention. On a field of 20 boys, I was the strong one, the celebrated one. And so it continued. A few years later, I found myself in the desert of Saudi Arabia. Living there is definitely different, and it's an experience not many people understand, but for those that do, it's very special. It's always weird trying to explain to people what it is actually living there. I'm sure lots of you are seeing endless rows of oil refineries or vast lands of sand dunes, and it's not that. I mean, it is, but there's so much more to it than that. There, for the kids at least, school is everything, because it connects you to the only other people your age living there. In the fall, we played volleyball. In the winter, we played soccer. In the spring, we ran track, and in the summer, we played basketball, simply because there was nothing else to do. All we had was each other, so we were close. Our circumstance made us close. The thing is, nothing gold can stay. All good things must come to an end, and I don't say this to be poetic or profound. I say this because it's true. There, the school system ends after 9th grade, so we're all forced to find different options. Unfortunately, we all chose differently, and that's where the trouble began. I was ready to go. Not that I didn't love my friends or appreciate the time I spent with them, but again, I was the strong one. I was the one who didn't cry when Greta's family moved back to Kelowna in grade 7. I was the one who beat all the boys' records in fitness testing, except for the mile. I couldn't run the mile. I still cannot run the mile. I was the one whose voice was still and stable when I told my friends that my grandma had died 3 days after my 12th birthday. That was me, the strong one. So, when it was time to go, as you can imagine, I had no problem. In fact, I left 3 days before the last day of school. The last time we'd ever be together, all of us in one place. I left and only told 3 people I was going. At that point, even I bought into it. I was strong, invincible. I had the power to turn off my feelings when everyone else seemed to be drowning in theirs, and the thing is, I didn't even know why. Was it because I thought I had a reputation to maintain, or was I really just an ice queen? I think the fact that I didn't know was the issue. I had let life happen to me, and for some people, that looks like emotional instability. But for me, it resulted in emotional sameness. I taught myself to react in the same way to anything and everything. Never too high, never too low, and some people say that's a sign of leadership, balance. I say it's a sign of immaturity. For the longest time, I didn't know how to be vulnerable, what it was to let people in, and it's funny, right? Because people didn't really seem to have any issues coming to me with their problems, the strong one. I spent so much time accepting people's praise and being that beacon of hope that everything was going to be okay that I'd forgotten what it meant for me to feel. One day, I was at a friend's house. We were doing homework, and I don't know if any of you are like me, but I hate sharing my music. I feel like it's that one thing you can keep a secret about yourself when everything else about your life seems to be on display. Anyways, friend's house, music. I hate sharing my music, but I hate working in silence even more. That's where my refusal to buy Spotify Premium came in clutch. I chose a song, let Spotify work its magic and do the rest for me. Then, one of my favorite songs came on by James Arthur, and I started to sing. Then you smiled over your shoulder. For a minute, I was stone cold sober. I pulled you closer to my chest. And then my friend started to sing too. It was the weirdest thing. We sat there, him and I just staring at my phone, and we just sang. And then we looked up at each other, and a tear, one single tear, rolled down my face. The words to the song were vulnerable, yes, but now here I was, singing them with someone I'd known my whole life, someone who'd known me to be hard and stable, yet here I was just letting myself get lost in the sauce of a corny love song. It didn't match my narrative, and it crushed me, and I loved it, and it changed me. Here's the thing. Taking a ball to the face and carrying on unfazed, can't lie, it's kind of a boss move, but it wasn't really strength. Obviously, at the age of 9 years old, I didn't think it was that deep, but I don't think my pride in that moment ever really went away. It got to the point where I didn't even have to pretend anymore. Saying things like, I'm okay and it's all good, became my normal, not necessarily because it was true, but because I'd forgotten what emotion actually matched a statement like, I'm having a really bad day. Since realizing this about myself, I've been working on it. I try to hug people more and say uncomfortable words like, I love you, and I hope, that ice is thawing. I look at where I am now, who I am now, and it reminds me of where I never want to be. It reminds me to notice how other people are feeling so that I can be kind, but I think more importantly, it reminds me to take a step back, notice how I'm feeling so that I can be unapologetically sad, angry, anxious, because the truth is I still think I'm the strong one. I think I take pride in being the strong one, but isn't every hero's victory that much sweeter when you've seen them at their weakest? Thank you.
Okay, so next up, we're just going to be watching a short TEDx video. It's titled, The Agony of Trying to Unsubscribe. It's super funny, and I hope you guys enjoy.
Our next and final speaker is Milo Shandell with his talk titled, Why Wait? He's a 1987 Brentwood grad, and Milo's an actor and director ranging from Vancouver, BC. His career started in Toronto at the Stratford Festival, in productions such as Beauty and the Beast and Mamma Mia. Most recently, he starred as Principal Tater in the YTV Disney XD show Mr. Young, and has played roles in Bong Joon-ho's Okja and Netflix's Travelers, and many more. He's also an acclaimed director, most recently working on a comedy music series for Netflix. On top of all this, he's been teaching acting for the last 10 years and is working with the acting department at the Vancouver Film School. Please put your hands together for Milo Shandell.
Thanks, buddy. Thank you. Thank you, Quinn. You're a fine young man. Thank you. Hey, everybody. It looks like I'm the last speaker of the day, so I will be brief, I promise, and then we'll send you off to your beautiful state-of-the-art cafeteria. You know, when I was here in the 80s, we used to look forward to Sloppy Joe Day. And the old gym was the new gym, so it's been a while. I want to talk to you about inspiration and ideas. Have you ever had a fantastic idea? A really, really great idea, a surefire winner, an OMG of an idea. You tell people what it is and they're like, oh yeah, dude, you've got to do that. Yeah, me too, it happened this morning. And does that idea give you just a great feeling about yourself? You feel like the future's bright and you're just gonna go out and conquer the world? Yeah, me too. And do you ever take that great idea and do absolutely nothing with it? You stick it on the shelf, it gathers dust until your enthusiasm for it slowly fizzles out until you think it's the stupidest idea you ever had and you don't know what anybody ever saw in it. Yeah, welcome to being an artist. What I'm going to talk to you about today is from my perspective as a creative artist, but really you could apply this in any area of life. By the way, even though I am an actor, I do have my notes, because I'm not playing a character, I'm talking to you as me. For those of you that don't know me and aren't familiar with my work, I am an actor and a director and a writer in the film and TV industry. But I started out on stage doing theater, classical theater, mostly musical theater, and I started out at this school under the direction of the man that this incredible building is named after, T. Gill Bunch. I have a creative partner in my life. It's my wife, Christine Audi. She's a brilliant actor and writer, and I'm very lucky to have access to her talents. When we were young, starting out as actors, we had a great idea for a musical. I mean, really, it was her idea, but I just kind of wrote her coattails. This musical was going to be a jukebox musical. Do you guys know what a jukebox musical is? It's like Mamma Mia, where you take pre-existing pop songs, rock songs, whatever, and you build a story around it, and that's your musical. This musical was going to be set in the 1980s in a large American city, in a legendary music club that is about to be shut down. There's a romantic boy meets girl story at its center. It was going to have lots of songs from the 80s, lots of fashions from the 80s, big hair, spandex, skinny ties, musicians on the stage. Now, those of you who know musicals might be saying to yourselves, wow, yeah, Milo and Christine created Rock of Ages, the hit Tony Award-winning Broadway musical that played 3,000 performances and toured North America and had productions in Toronto and Los Angeles and London and was turned into a movie starring Tom Cruise. That's a picture of me from when I went to Brentwood, by the way. No, we did not create Rock of Ages. Our show was called No Feelings and was set in the New York punk scene at CBGB's and was loosely based on Shakespeare's Much Ado About Nothing and was never produced. Because even though we had a premise, we had characters, we had relationships, we had a musical genre. We never wrote a script. And the reason we never wrote a script is because two things. We got busy. We were young actors. Our careers started taking off. We were traveling a lot. But also, I heard about a workshop in Los Angeles for this little show that was going to become Rock of Ages, set in the 1980s, in a large American city, in a legendary music club that was about to be shut down, with a romantic boy meets girl story at its center, and songs from the 80s and fashions from the 80s, big hair, spandex, skinny ties, musicians on stage. Sounds familiar, right? What happened to me, well, really what happened to us, was we slammed up against the most common obstacle to creativity: confidence. We asked ourselves, is our idea any good? The 19th century poet and philosopher Ralph Waldo Emerson said, "In every work of genius, we recognize our own rejected thoughts. They come back to us with a certain alienated majesty." Well, when I finally saw Rock of Ages, all I could think of was how majestically alienated I felt. It was, checking my notes, thank you very much. It was running up against another impediment, which is thinking too far ahead. So we asked ourselves, is our idea any good? And will people like it? Will it be worth it? It's always worth it. You always have to try. You'll learn more from your failures than from your successes, and I think that applies not just in the creative arts, but in any industry. So how do we act upon that inspiration? When we have that spark of inspiration, how do we take it from idea to execution, to something tangible? Well, we can start out very simply. Absorb. Whatever your creative discipline, absorb yourself in it. If you're a writer, read. If you're an actor, go to theater, watch movies, watch TV. If you're a musician, listen to all different kinds of music. When I was growing up, I loved TV sitcoms. I loved them. Happy Days, Mork and Mindy. When I was in college, it was Friends, it was Seinfeld. Now, Big Bang Theory, Modern Family. But when I became a professional actor, I started out doing serious drama, classical theater. 20 years of theater. And then I had the good fortune to be cast as a high school principal in a kids sitcom called Mr. Young. Some of you may be familiar with it. Suddenly, my 20 years of experience in training in theater was completely useless. My performance in that show was completely informed by the thousands of hours I had spent watching sitcoms. I learned from the best. By the way, my performance as the principal in that show was in no way based on any current or former headmasters of this fine institution. Just putting that out there, that's my disclaimer. Sorry, bud. By consuming art, we give ourselves the tools to create art. Another quote from Emerson: "Genius borrows nobly." If you see something that inspires you, borrow it, steal it, develop it. Don't worry if someone has done it before you, because I guarantee you one thing: whatever your end result is that started from that moment of inspiration, it's going to be completely unique to you, because it's coming from you. It's being filtered through your lens, and each one of you is a completely unique individual. If you think about it, you can compare that to Hamlet. Let's talk about Hamlet. I'm sure you guys are sick of it by this point, but how many actors have played Hamlet over the last 500 years? A lot. 10,000, maybe 50,000, I mean, who knows? Same play, same character, same lines, but comparing, say, Mel Gibson's performance to John Gielgud's is like comparing a cucumber to a lemon, and I'm not saying which is which. Mel Gibson is the lemon. Don't talk yourself out of anything. Just do it. That's also a famous quote, by the way. Can't remember where I heard it, but I'm pretty sure it's out there somewhere. Second thing, take the leap. Take that jump. The first step is always the hardest, and there are a million reasons not to do something. But you've got to have the courage and the confidence to move forward. If you can just write down notes for yourself, if you have an idea for a story, just start banging out that first awful draft. Talk to that person in authority who might be able to help you or give you some advice. Summon up the courage to talk to someone. When I was just an actor on Mr. Young, Gil Bunch would be so proud, by the way, I had a crew member come up to me and say, "You seem to really know what you're doing in this genre. Maybe you should ask to direct an episode." And I thought to myself, you know, I just started acting on TV. I have barely directed theater. I couldn't see myself being in charge of a cast and crew of 40 to 50 people and a $700,000 budget. It didn't seem real to me. But I thought about it, and I started taking baby steps. I started talking to the producers, and I talked to the writers. And then I put together a little cast and crew, and we shot a demo reel and a short film. And those efforts led directly to me being offered to direct multiple episodes of multiple different kids shows from Vancouver to Toronto. Again, I got nominated for awards, and it just led me to where I am today, which is that now Christine and I have a kids show in development with Netflix. Which brings me to this. Gather the tools you need to succeed. Whether it's a new camera, or a tablet, a new laptop. Maybe it's just a quiet place for you to work. Maybe it's surrounding yourself with people who are also creative and who care about you enough to say the things that maybe you don't want to hear. Different viewpoints are absolutely crucial to the creative process. Okay, last quick story about me and Mr. Young, and then I promise I won't mention it again. When I was in the process of auditioning, I'd had 3 callbacks over a couple of months, and I'd heard nothing. We were heading out of town with our kids. We really needed a little vacation. It had been very busy. We needed to get out of town. And I got a call in the car on the way to the ferry that my 4th callback for Mr. Young was going to be the next morning. I almost told my agent to forget about it. I thought it was a mirage. I thought they were just going to hire an American. I'd had 3 callbacks and heard nothing. I was pretty much fed up with it by that point. My creative partner, my wife, said to me, "Don't be an idiot. Of course you're going to go to that callback and we'll have a staycation. Don't worry about it, but you need to go to that callback." That was not what I wanted to hear, especially the part about me being an idiot. But I went. I booked it. We did 3 seasons, nominated for awards. It transformed my career, led me to where I am today. I often think about how close I was to saying no and blowing that chance. Who knows where I'd be today? Maybe I'd be working at Tim Hortons. I don't know. My career as an artist and an entertainer has run the gamut from theater, the Brentwood stage, stages all across North America, TV, film, directing, writing, Netflix. That was my path. But what will yours be? I don't know. What am I, a psychic? What I do know is that every single one of you is going to have your own unique journey with creativity. Be brave, gird your loins, and treasure your ideas. Because I'll tell you a secret about ideas. There are no bad ones. They're all good. Every idea that you come up with is a good idea. There's only the ideas that you do something about and those that you don't. Those ones up on the shelf. Be brave. Take that step. It all starts with that one tiny step. Now, I'm going to go home and I'm going to try to follow my own advice because I think it sounds pretty good. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Wow. The word that I'm overtaken with right now is gratitude. So grateful for all these amazing speakers that we got to see today, and really are going to inspire us to continue to think about the topics that you heard. It's not your average Saturday here at Brentwood. Also always wondered, if I step right in the middle, will I fall through? What I want to do right now is invite our speakers, some of them are sitting in the audience right now, some are in the back, to come out and receive some special gifts from the school. So I think once again, I just want another round of applause for our presenters. I will release you now. You can go. You spent enough. Before we leave, I think that we all need to also acknowledge all the hard work that goes into producing an event like this. First off, I want to thank the people that are behind the scenes, running our theater production, so a huge round of applause for them, please. I want to thank food services as well. Round of applause for our food services team. Acknowledgement for our amazing MCs, Quinn and Ashley. You guys can stay with me and give me more support. Last two bits of acknowledgement would be for, first off, you, the audience. What an amazing school we have. What an amazing display for this day for us to share in. And one person that we need to acknowledge, obviously, is the person who's brought this amazing event to Brentwood for now 6 years running, Mr. Ian McPherson. Please give a round of applause for Mr. Ian McPherson. All that I ask is that you have an amazing Saturday. You think about the topics that we've talked about here today, and maybe we get a chance to talk about them more in class and in the houses. Please understand that everyone needs to eat lunch, so let's exit slowly at each side of the stage. Thank you very much.